Children suffer, innocents die. Nature kills without mercy. If God is all-powerful and all-good, why does He allow it? This is not just a philosophical dilemma. It is personal, existential, and urgent. Syra, you begin.
If God exists, and is both all-powerful and all-loving, then the existence of gratuitous suffering is a fatal contradiction. Consider a child dying slowly from bone cancer. What lesson is being taught? What character is being built? What higher purpose could justify such agony? You might say free will explains moral evil, but natural evil is untouched by that defense. Earthquakes, genetic disorders, famines, and tsunamis are not moral choices. They're features of the system, a system supposedly designed by an all-wise being. An omnipotent God could have created a world with free will and less suffering, one without malaria, one without parasitic worms that eat the eyes of children. The scope and scale of suffering make it implausible that this world is the best He could do. Some theists argue that suffering builds the soul, that pain refines us. But that only applies if the suffering is understood, bearable, and redemptive. What about infants who die in pain, animals torn apart in nature, billions who suffer with no lesson, no justice, and no end? And when no explanation is found, the fallback is always mystery. But mystery is not an answer. If you saw a parent allowing this kind of harm and said, "Well, I'm sure they have a higher purpose," you'd be complicit in the abuse. If an all-powerful, all-good being exists, then this world, with all its horrors, is either what He wanted or what He allowed. And neither version is comforting.
There is no denying the depth of human suffering. But the existence of suffering does not logically contradict the existence of a morally perfect, all-powerful God. To begin with, consider what you're doing when you call suffering wrong. You're appealing to a moral standard, something higher than pain or survival. But in a purely material universe, where all things are the product of blind forces, what is suffering but chemistry? A tragedy only exists if there's a way the world ought to be, and that requires a moral reality beyond physics. Now to the question itself, why would a good God allow evil? The first answer is freedom. A world of moral agency, where love, courage, loyalty, and justice are possible, must also be a world where those things can be betrayed. Real choice means the real possibility of evil. You might say, why not less freedom? But how much should be removed, at what cost? If we remove all capacity to harm, we remove all capacity to choose meaningfully. What about natural evil, earthquakes, disease, and death? Here, the theist doesn't claim to know all the reasons, but we can observe that many of the same processes that cause suffering are also the very ones that make life possible. Tectonic activity produces habitable land. Biological evolution enables intelligence. Even aging and death may be conditions that allow for renewal, growth, and moral urgency. A stable, lawful, intelligible world, one where free beings can develop, may necessarily include risk and loss. Could a better world have been made? Perhaps, but perhaps not without erasing the very goods we hold most dear: consciousness, freedom, love, and the ability to grow. In the end, the theist doesn't say all suffering is understood, only that it may be redeemable, and that meaning and morality still hold, even in the face of pain.
You're defending the unimaginable. You say suffering is a trade-off, part of the structure of a free and ordered world. But you're describing a designed system. If the structure results in the drowning of entire villages or millions dying from disease, then either the designer is limited or morally indifferent. You suggest that suffering is necessary for growth. But for whom? What is an infant's death building? What virtue is being formed in a deer torn apart by predators? Most suffering on this planet doesn't result in moral transformation. It just happens, brutally, pointlessly, and then ends. And when that becomes hard to explain, you say, "We don't know the reason, but there may be one." That's not logic. That's theology without evidence. You asked where morality comes from on atheism, But I don't need a deity to say that pain is bad. I need only empathy. If I burn my hand, I don't need a cosmic law to know I should avoid it and prevent it in others. Morality is rooted in conscious experience. No God required. If God exists and created this system, then he allowed all of it. Birth defects, war crimes, famine, rape, slow death. If humans did this, we'd call it evil. If a God does it, we call it mysterious? That's not moral reasoning. That's moral surrender.
Your anger is justified, but your framework removes any grounding for it. You say morality comes from empathy, but empathy varies. Cultures differ. Some feel nothing for others at all. Why should one brain's pain signal dictate moral law for the universe? Without a transcendent source, morality is just preference, and your protest against suffering becomes no more significant than a shudder at bad weather. Now, about the scale of suffering. You argue that a better world is possible. But let me ask, better by what standard? Fewer tears, less death, certainly. But perhaps a world with no suffering would also be a world with no real depth, no urgency, no sacrifice, and no meaning. If death were impossible and pain never touched us, would we grow? Would we love as fiercely? Would we make anything of consequence? You raise the problem of animals. It's true we don't fully know why animals suffer, but we also don't fully understand consciousness itself. The moral status of non-human suffering is part of a wider mystery, one that doesn't dissolve theism but simply humbles us. The theist does not deny the horror, but we insist that horror alone doesn't make this world meaningless. Pain can destroy, but it can also awaken. Grief can shatter, but it can also open the heart to love, humility, and wisdom. Even the worst evils can, in some cases, lead to astonishing resilience and beauty. That doesn't make suffering good. It makes it capable of serving something greater. In a cold universe, suffering is noise. In a created one, it may be refined into meaning, not always seen, not always understood, but possible.
If you want to see the full debate, including every topic from fine-tuning to morality, consciousness, and more, tap the link on your screen now and watch the complete Does God Exist debate.